A train rushes through the snowy, deserted mountains. His wheels with a circle knock on the wheel. Inside the chase, passengers briskly talk about their business. Nothing portends trouble. Then, several muddy types exchange glances with each other. Friend. After which they get up from their seats, and one of them tells them to start. They demand from all the remaining passengers that you also have become because of their places. One of them, obviously nervous, asks what they are going to do. Then they plug his mouth with a muzzle pistol. The bandit tells him to shut his mouth, and then adds that from now on, anyone who says even a word will get a hole in head. What seriously scares all the people inside the car. Then, in some other place to some person, his subordinate comes up and reports that they have begun act. He lights a cigar and says that in that case everything great, and adds to until the arrival of the group transportation. They intimidated everyone there as they should. His command is immediately accepted. Then, the man with the cigar turns around to another man standing in the room, and then says that it is similar to this. Once they are lucky, and everything will go according to their scenario. To which, his interlocutor replies with doubts. He says that not everything is so simple, and there may be someone from the association nearby. Shamans. And that's why he's here. A man with a cigarette says that it is unlikely that the fools from associations at such a time will hang around in the outskirts. So, they are fine. Suddenly, his conversation is interrupted by the sound of a walkie-talkie. He is informed that there was a problem on the spot, and then he hears the scream coming from the radio. The man screams to explain to him what is going on there. But he hears only a request to send reinforcements to the fourth car, because there were these very shamans. Then, the guy with the pierced mouth turns around, and clearly anticipating such a development of the situation, pronounces the word bingo. You can see the face of one of the bandits. He is obviously shabby and has several teeth are missing. He is being held by the scruff of the neck by some fair-haired boy. He says he asks for the last time, and then asks. The question is where is their leader? And he, in turn, not wanting to die, betrays his boss and says that he is in the first carriage. The kid with the big scar all over his face finally gets the information he needs. This is Dante Chloe, 19 years old. He is a cadet. National Association of Shamans. Behind the boy suits the girls. This is Grace for her too. 19 years old, and she is a cadet of the National Association of Shamans. She says that lately, this gang has brought a lot of noise in the area, selling people. Then the guy who found out this information says that I wonder if they will get extra points if they will fix this problem. Girl bewildered asks what he means and what he is going to do. In response, the boy rolls up his sleeves and says that there is only one way to solve this issue. Then he folds his hands and talks about how he is going grind your opponents to powder right now. The guy says they need to split up. For starters, he go to the first car and figure out what's going on there, and asks the girl to deal with the resident reinforcements from the opposite side of the train and take care of the rest of the people. When the guy was already running away, the girl began to scream at his back and remind him that him cannot be used here, and just in case, tells him to regulate his strength, and he responds with the usual okay. Then, one of the civilians, a mother with a child, asks who they, whether they are people from the association, and then asks her to say what will happen to them. To this, the girl says that they, for the time being, are just cadets, and people should take their word for it for now. She says that that guy, Dante, is a recognized shaman association for their merit. It can be seen how some hieroglyphs light up on his hands. He approaches the door behind which there are bandits preparing to receive it. One of them reminds the rest that the shaman will leave them. They should be neat. Then, suddenly, the door opens and we see some blue chains. With one jerk, Dante flies between all opponents, and with the help of his abilities wraps everyone in chains. And they, in turn, could not even do anything. Oppose this. Then, one by one, they fall to the floor of the car. One of them, obviously not understanding what is happening, yells out of fear. He asks what it is it magic? Dante tells him not to waste his strength in vain. No matter how much he tries, and no matter how hard he tries, he break free from these shackles. After that, the guy sees how the door opens in front of him. From there, a crowd of armed men is preparing to attack him. The hieroglyphs on his hands light up again, and he creates energy shield in front of you, asking rhetorical questions to himself. How many of them have gathered here? The bandits open fire, but all the bullets are broken blue barrier in front of the shaman, and that, in turn, fast moves towards them. Some armed people are beginning to understand what it is. Bullets can't take a guy, but the leader makes them continue. Fire. Then, when the shaman was already in front of the nose of one of attackers, a blow is heard. The blast wave scatters the entire group of bandits right by wagon. And in a moment, Dante is already standing alone near the mountain. Lying people. The shaman is clearly annoyed. The number of opponents does not decrease. On the contrary, with each step more and more comes. One of the mercenaries stands in complete shock. All of it. Subordinates lay down from one child in 1 second. He starts yelling that this guy is a monster, but, suddenly, his pulls on the shoulder. The same boy with the piercing comes out of the first car. He asks the mercenaries to dump, as they will only interfere with him. He stands opposite Dante and explains to his subordinates that this guy is a shaman. They can't deal with him. So now he will deal with him. In response to this, the shaman activates his marks again and asks the enemy if he is responsible for everything here. Pierced man says to hunk in front. Suited him. The guy says that this man's standing. On the contrary, there is something wrong with him. His energy. He takes off, swings, and with an incredible moving towards his opponent with speed. Speaking at this, that he needs to deal with him in one blow. The new enemy has a straight face. He is clearly unimpressed. Such a speed boy. A rumble spreads throughout all the cars, and the partner hears it. Dante. She turns to the sound, and says that her partner. It's probably too loud. To which, one of the bound bandits replies, that she believes too much in his friend. The criminal, although bound, is clearly calm, confident in situations. He says those two are just worthless. After all, on their side, there is a real monster. But his contented smirk is knocked down by a blow to the face. The girl crosses her arms and calmly says that he got too much. How suddenly. In the middle of her phrase, like a cardboard box, she takes out a huge the iron door of the neighboring car. She turns around and sees Dante lying, wounded. The guy, with a huge cut on his chest, just lies without consciousness, open mouth. The girl asks what happened, how is it at all could happen. And then behind her appears the silhouette of that pierced person. Seeing a girl, he says that he found another one. Suicidal. The girl is shocked. She realizes that this guy is in everything guilty. But the strange thing is that he left the battle without a single scratches, whatever. The man who defeated Dante stands in front of her, and with a satisfied mug asks the girl what happened and why is she not even going to attack. The girl, in turn. The same marks on the hands light up, and it is set. The question of who is standing in front of her. And the contented adversary continues his monologue, saying, what if she starts then? But his stories are interrupted by suddenly appearing flames on his head, blue in color. The girl who just lit his head on fire is standing with outstretched hand and asks who he is. Imagine her surprise when she saw how her flame. It just goes off on his head, and after she completely disappeared, and exposed a little burnt head of this man, he with the same smirk says that she is even weaker than that guy. Then he just walks up to her and asks if it's alright, what she is capable of. The girl, all on her nerves, in her head asks a rhetorical question. She asks herself, is it really cursed? Magic. Then, the bandit's hand becomes the same color as burns on his face. She is deformed, and instead of fingers, grow long black claws. And this maniac says it's too much. He doesn't like the way she called his cursed magic. He swings and prepares to blow her head off, screaming at that is not a curse, but a blessing. And the girl activates the energy shield, realizing that she does not dodge. A moment and the shield breaks, hit this monster, pierces it and hits N's arm. She falls to the ground. Rising, she realizes that he broke her arm with one blow. She asks herself what kind of goal is standing in front of her. The room of the first car. One of the mercenaries asks their boss, can they trust that creepy guy? For what? He replies that if they sent him there, then everything under control, and should not be a problem. The smoking man adds that he has already passed them a huge pile of goods. They have worked together for a long time. Besides, if they will deal with the matter then. Suddenly his conversation is interrupted. Behind him, another guy sneaks up with red beads on the neck and apologizes to the smoker man. Someone even levels a cigarette out of fear and yells at the boy who appeared where he came from. He replies that came from the toilet. After that, the kid gets a blow in the stomach from the leg of an angry boss. He yells at him, how dare he sneak up on the boss behind and scare him. The guy is vomiting blood. The ringleader quite stands up in a winning pose and says to the kid how weak he is. He only got one punch in the stomach. Is already dying. And then he and his assistant look at this guy and start talk about what, even if they take him away now to sell, then no one, even has such a weak person, wants to take as a gift. After these words, the guy in the beads gets up. They continue to mock him. They say that he carries some nonsense. How suddenly, blue lights up on his hand. Hieroglyph. The action is transferred back to the car. The girl is bleeding. People watching this are in complete shock. A man with piercings and demonic arms, just holding N's unconscious body by one hand. He then asks her if she is still alive. After all, he will be very bored if she dies. So besides, he more and will fly for the death of the goods. He then throws her to the ground. And he says that this is all too boring, because you can't touch the goods with your finger. At this moment, the child is in the arms of one of the passengers, starts to cry loudly, and this attracts the attention of this monster. He turns to him and says that the goods cannot be touched. But if it's one noisy kid, it's okay. Will not happen. The woman starts screaming in fear. She begs the bandit not to do this. She says she's ready to do anything, as long as he doesn't touch her baby. In response to this, the guy with the piercing almost laughed. He asks her to calm down and says that it was just joke. And did she really believe that he was so inhuman? Only here there is one nuance. He looks at the passenger with a monstrous look and says that, to be honest, his crying begins to affect him nerves. He tells her to make him shut up for 3 seconds, otherwise. He comes to her seat, leans over them, and says, what if she doesn't silence him? Otherwise, the boy's mouth will have to be torn a little. Then he starts counting down. 3, 2. When he counts to 1, all of a sudden, over a bluish silhouette appears to him. He waves his hand, and in response a man with a piercing only manages to turn around. And then, suddenly, like a bolt from the blue, for the whole car, blow is delivered. The guy with the beads hits his opponent from top to bottom, literally slamming him into the floor in front of everyone. Bandits. Passengers are shocked. Mercenaries, being in the same horror, begins to get firearms and prepare for battle. and the mother and child have not even had time to come to their senses. On the emerging hero. Then, the bearded guy sighs heavily. He looks at the work he has just done with himself, and he says he seems to be a little overzealous. In the first carriage, while a man with a cigarette kicks a guy in red beads, he calls him an idiot. Then he turns to his assistant and asks, "Teach the boy." He, in turn, obeys. He grabs the guy by the hood and starts dragging him along. Not even a second passes, as the guy waves his hand, and also a moment, the head of the mercenaries flashes with blue fire. And in the next moment he is already imprinted into the wall. The guy literally knocked the whole soul out of the thug, with a single punch to the stomach. The leader, looking at all this, slowly begins. Be aware of your position. And then, almost stunned, he asks himself what is here happening. To which he is asked a counter question already from the guy in the beads. The kid asks if he is in charge here. The shaman then activates his marks and tells the mercenary that will have, now, to tell him everything that interests him. But their goals, but the number of people and their distribution. In the wagon imprinted in the floor of a man with a piercing emanates steam. On it, calmly stands the guy that just won. He slowly turns to the remaining mercenaries. They scream, "Is it really against them again?" The shaman. Then one of them pulls out a gun and points it at the kid, with orders not to move. But after a moment, the shaman simply disappeared. He appeared behind a bunch of bandits and from a turn, with his foot, knocked their heads off. The guy gets up to rest. He looks at his burning blue hand. And then he repeats to himself that apparently he himself overestimated. He understands that his strength is running out, and decides. End it all. Suddenly, one of the passengers calls out piercingly. Guy to pay attention. He yells at him to be careful, until the guy quickly looks back at him. Behind him, already in flight, a man with a piercing jumps up. But now he really looks more like some kind of monster. All covered with some kind of dark petrified skin. Instead of a hand, he has something similar to a drill. He is swift. Approaches and prepares to pierce everything in front of him. But the guy again evaporates with his abilities, taking with him to just cut down bandits. Calmly, already in a new place, he speaks ironically to his opponent that he was already awake. A guy with petrified skin and a creepy smile, obviously pleased with the strength of your opponent. You notice that he saves even bandits. After this, the guy finally understands what is in front of him. Also a shaman. And his opponent, grinning, tells him not to even dreamed of an easy death. The civilians on the train finally lose their temper. They are scared. The monster in front of him is also surprised. He says, "That I did not expect to turn into such and such a place, just from hit by a boy." And then he adds that fists are already naughty. He is in anticipation of a fight. The guy notices that he almost killed a second ago. Their own. To this, the man with the piercing smiles and says that he doesn't nothing to do with some worthless people, and what he it doesn't matter if they die or not. After these words, in the blink of an eye, he takes off and attempts to attack, saying at the same time that if someone does not like something, then let him try to protect them. Frightened people can do nothing with such a threat. In front of themselves, they do not even have time to scatter. Guy thinking to himself, what is it for him to evade? This is not a problem. The point is that if he now he will not be stopped, there will be a lot of victims among civilian population. And in that case, he rises from the ground, his hand lights up blue glow. He then uses the same energy shield as Andante, only his barrier is much larger and stronger than his, and he stops the opponent's attack. The monster, burying his spiked hand in the shield, with devilish grin, tells the guy about how he, intrigued and generally must admit that his rival, complex enough still well, and he is very interested in who stands in front of him. After that, he says that with the shamans with whom he fought a minute ago there was absolutely no problem. According to him, their milk has not yet dried on their lips. They, completely inexperienced and not fun to mess around with. And to whom? But the guy doesn't listen to him. He calls out to the man behind him. After that, he says that he will buy time for them, and he, in turn, must escape and take with him all remaining people as far as possible from this place, even bandits. Also, he asks not to worry about the thugs, saying that they fell asleep for a long time. This makes his opponent laugh. He laughs at what the guy is carrying and says that it is commendable. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot break through the barrier of this shaman. After that, he tells him that he does not want to interrupt him, but his opponent looks like a living corpse. He says that he is simply wasting his energy saving these people. Looking at him, he understands that he can barely stand on his feet, and I should have stopped doing this. But surprisingly, monster, the guy replies that now is the time to something. He takes himself with one hand on the sleeve of the other hand, and then says he just didn't want to do it in public. He rips off a whole sleeve in his jacket, and because of this, it becomes clear that the energy and these symbols are at point all over his hand, after which he tells the opponent that it's time to end it. The spiked monster is clearly surprised by this. He has never before. I have not seen shamans with tattoos all over their arm. A sharp burst of energy right in front of the monster's face. After that, he is immediately thrown away from the shaman by the strongest explosive wave. To slow down, a person with a piercing has to use all three limbs. But even so, it flies to another part of the car. And then he looked at his opponent. He turns out to be completely stunned. He is in complete incomprehension. Where did he get such a powerful aura? Now in front of him is just an ordinary boy. After that, he catches himself on a thought that is very worries him. Right now, he's scared. He tries to pull himself together and tell himself it's funny and he won't die so easily. After these words, the final human form leaves him. His body becomes more and more like monster. He got that power at too much cost to die like this. The shaman is absolutely unimpressed. At the moment when both of his hands turned into a tool for destruction, he says that some shaman does not overcome. He abruptly rushes forward and shouts to his opponent's son that he will be finished in the same second. The shaman, in response to this, simply stretches his hand forward. He says that he is sorry to upset his rival, but such like him, you need to exterminate. The train rushes through snow-covered snowdrifts and a blizzard. And in a moment, the car in which the battle took place lights up with a bright blue flame. It can be seen that this striking rumble and vibration was heard absolutely at all the cars. Every living person is here felt that something had happened. The guy's hand is slowly cooling down after what happened. And then it turns out that he didn't just attack his rival, but literally melted the rows of seats along with the door to the carriage and his rival. The monster has been defeated. After that, the guy, who was already bleeding from his nose, sighs with relief and says that finally all this ended. Then he notices that he barely survived this battle, more a little bit and he would, but he did not finish. He coughed up a piece of blood, and then immediately loses consciousness, falls to the ground, and just stays in the middle. Empty wagon. It's still snowing outside. A train with broken windows stands on the platform of some station. People crowded on the spot. The crowd whispers about what is there could have happened. Some say the train was attacked. Bandits attacked, but in the end they were all caught. Employees of the organization stand in front of piles of tied mercenaries and discuss why people from headquarters. One of the bound thugs turns to the boss and says that those who were supposed to meet them never came to the platforms. It makes him fucking mad. He tells him to shut up, and then add that they are not ashamed. They managed lose a handful of school children being armed to the teeth. Then he remembers the situation in his head and says that the whole problem is in this boy with burning eyes, as he puts it. Then, one of the workers named Duke Bright, Precinct 22-3 State Associations of Shamans, asks the mercenaries to shut their mouths and shut up. He says that they won't talk later, and even without of their own desire they will soon have to speak. His interrupts the greeting of one of the arriving shamans. Some girl apologizes for being late. She and some other guy in a red mask make excuses. The fact that the old people did not let them go. The fifth squad arrived. Headquarters of the State Association of Shamans. She asks the worker if they are really here. Figured out point, he answers, yes, and then explain. Situation. Mercenaries, in the amount of 20 pieces, including the leader, tried to hijack the train. He continues and says that, however, the candidates inside the criminals were stopped, and civilians rescued. However, throughout this story, one nuance. He hands the girl a piece of paper with documents, and then he says that most likely the bandits had a healer. She, being shocked, examines the sheet, and wonders how the rookies were able to beat the high level, and then asks if they were hurt. She looks at the profiles of each of the shamans who participated in the battle, until it is added to her that they are wounded, but not fatal, and they are all now sent to the hospital with association. Then, she is told that on the last page of the report before the same candidate. She turns the page and what she sees is in earnest intriguing. It depicts the same guy in red beads. It turns out that his name is Von Erassel, and his education received some unconventional training. She gives the report back to the hands of the worker saying that everything is clear here, and then asks if they said something like this. Medicine man. The worker says no. He explains that that type has that more character, he is too dangerous. So he immediately put him in jail. The girl turns towards the snowfall, and then asks something about the car. Then the worker warns her. He tells her to be careful, because even though he is now bound, but nevertheless, he still has the strength. Truck door slowly open. Inside, a girl from the association looks in. Inside she meets a rather entertaining picture. Our back a terrible monster, sitting with chained, in some hand fitting. He is hung with various tubes and hoses, and is completely chained in this position. From scene, she even asks herself if he is alive. After these words, the bandit raises his head, and asks who she. She stands in front of him to her full height, and tells him to. He made his face simpler, and calmed down a little. She tells him that he was beaten by ordinary candidates for associations, they were not even shamans. It pisses the hell out of the guy, but there's nothing he can do. Then, the girl is going to get straight to the point. She adds that she practically does not expect to receive from him a clear answer in this place, but still try. Then she asks him in a cold voice, where he is learned to conjure. This surprises the guy. He thought about what she would ask now. About the men who fought him. Then, he says that unfortunately absolutely nothing can say if she wants so, then let her finish him off. Place, right now. To which the girl replies that she knew it. She raises her other hand, and then grabs her left eye. And she says at the same time, that she wanted to do everything in a good way, in a bad way, and add that the guy himself is in this guilty. This, again, is a little surprising for a man chained in this van, and he automatically asks what crazy going on here. Then, his face suddenly changes, apparently realizing that now he is waiting. The whole body, as well as the street, is flooded with a piercing terrible cry of pain. All the remaining hunters pay attention to this, because they know that somewhere now there will be a result. After that, the door of the van opens slightly. The girl, obviously tired after the procedure, comes out of it. She walks with disappointment near her partner, and says that once again this is a mistake, that it is neon. After all this, she gives orders to the remaining to the workers of the association, so that they put him in jail for especially dangerous criminals, and then asks, "Employee, are there any other instructions?" He replies that, "No, they will send the rest to the precinct 29 square." After this conversation, the girl says goodbye to the remaining workers and says that they will return to the headquarters. After she and her partner move away, one of the workers asks not, was she, by chance, it was the same one from the 5th detachment. For what? His partner asks if he is seeing her for the first time. After this conversation, he explains to him that she is their boss. So you have to listen. And adds that in life, he would. I did not advise you to cross paths with her. The partner in bewilderment asks why. Yes, what? Receives an answer that lately, she was given the most dark and terrible things. At the same time, even the guys working in her unit also can't really say anything about her. They just say that he kept her side, and that's it. Witch doctor, still hard to rest from the past. Meetings. He literally screams, ask. I'm myself, then she's so damn. It still brings him down. Crazy her eyes with them clearly something is wrong. After which he says that her eyes were exactly like those of him. The guy who defeated the healer slowly opens his eyes. He wakes up on a bed in a hospital room. He sticks out of bed, and notices attached to his hand drip. And then, rhetorically asks himself where he is now located. He gets to his feet. Then he slowly walks over to the window, and looks out. In front of his face, a huge symbol opens. Association of Shamans, located on the nearby building. After that, he notices countless shamans of various strengths and experience. After seeing all this, he says to himself that, finally, his plan worked and he succeeded. Finally he was able to get into the state association. Shamans, elves. These mysterious creatures, I'm now incredibly old. Times, peacefully coexist with people. But unfortunately, after the extinction of the forest spirits, all the elves also disappeared from the face of the earth. And after that, the remnants of their energy became scattered throughout remote corners of the whole earth. It is explained that at some point after this, children born with incredible abilities from birth, after that, energized mankind quickly learned them, control, and their strength, gradually, is transmitted from generation after generation, slowly stopped more and more powerfully. And it still is, to this day. Suddenly a scream is heard from the crowd. He calls out to people, and asks them to look at the fight that is happening nearby. In the center, an impromptu circle of onlookers stands, all Rowan, Dante and some guy in a yellow hood. Dante angrily yells at his opponent, and asks him, repeat what he just said. He is clearly glad that he was able to bring Dante to aggression. He asks him what is wrong, saying that Dante killed with just one hit, and then adds that the star their academies, it turns out, are nothing of themselves in a real battle. Is magic, tricks and so on gave this power a lot titles. But today, one thing has taken root. The name, and that is sorcery. Both opponents facing each other activate marks on my hands. I continue the intensified skirmish. Dante says if a guy wants to die, he can help him with this. All this, from the window of the hospital ward, is being watched by the guy in the beads. He is clearly impressed by what is happening. It is explained that those who can use this power, under called sorcery, do it with the help of blessings of elves, and such people are called shamans. Suddenly, a man approaches from behind. A doctor with glasses and a white coat, who could silently sneak up behind the shaman, asks how he is. Woke up quickly. The guy is frightened and sharply turns back, asking, while who is behind him. The doctor introduces himself as the one who cured him. He asks the guy not to worry, and tells him that he, the official physician of the association, and the boy can call him just Hessen. The guy, after an awkward silence, gives out thanks, and then thinks of introducing himself. and says that he is, but his doctor interrupts. He says that he has known for a long time who guy like that. After these words, the doctor gives out a base about the main character, showing that he knows absolutely everything about him. He says that Von Irassel is now standing in front of him. He is 18 years old, also. He knows that the guy is the only one of all the candidates received non-traditional training, and at the same time he, with his own hands, he himself has already carried out several times successful captures of bandits and black magicians. After that, the healer says that now he has already finished your treatment, and in theory, the background should already be able to use your jinn. And right after that, he asks the boy, demonstrate your ability to do so. That agrees. The marks on the guy's hands are activated, and he himself is under impression after such a restoration. In his head, he understands that some resistance greatly decreased, or rather not even so at the moment. He doesn't feel it at all, and usually, he would need at least a week to recover to such condition after the battle. He thanks the doctor, who, in turn, boasts and says that only he is able to cure him so quickly. The doctor remarks that, frankly, he is rather surprised and had never seen such a strange situation before. He adds that the power of resistance in each person individually, and this guy has this resistance either greatly blocks his abilities or is completely absent. Then their conversation is interrupted by some noise. The background draws attention to him, to which the doctor replies that it's okay, it just started again. On the street, still fresh dents from impacts on the ground, still glow with a bluish glow. The fight continues and Dante is in flight, feeding on the jump on your opponent. Already a little beaten boy in a yellow hood says that his opponent is a moron and asks him if he really wants to go all the way. He, in turn, concentrates energy in his right hand and asks the opponent to shut up. A blow is heard. Dante struck his attack on the man's score in yellow hood. They both exchange angry looks. After that, from the amount of energy, the barrier explodes and scatters opponents in different directions. Someone in the crowd asks if they should try separate these two, and on what it is reasonable to receive a question. He knows whether he is who these two are. He quickly explains to a man in the crowd that the guy whose scar is Dante Chloe. Then he asks his whether the interlocutor knows something about a ram. The ram is a place of quintessence of bandit and slave life. But Dante was able to become famous there. What about blue hair? Colors who is Roy S. Uford? He explains that this is a Superman who became famous already on the territory of Darnell, and he also definitely not a mistake. After this story, a guy from the crowd asks him, how does he know so much about them? What does he get? The answer is that this is obvious. The strong need to learn in advance, to recognize in person, to know with whom then to be friends. Gradually, in full view of everyone, one comes out of the crowd. Human. People ask each other who is this daredevil what? Leaned forward. The fight is in full swing. The rivals are yelling at each other. Dante still bends his line and yells at his enemy so that he takes the words back, and he, in his turn, answers him something about self-control. They are preparing to hit each other, as suddenly for everyone. It's just that this person appears between them. He manages to grab each of the participants in the fight by the hand, in moment of the eye. After that, he simply takes and throws these two in different directions, thereby interrupting the battle. They fly a few meters away from him. None of the participants in the battle understands what is happening, and what type is that? And he, in turn, as if not hearing their questions, asks them if they are not ashamed. He states that they, future candidates for the association, staged a massacre here, and they should stop now. And if they don't want to stop, he will make them. After these words, he revealingly lights his seal on hand, show the seriousness of your intentions. To this, Dante replies that these two are just trying piss him off. and also revealingly lights his seal. And the blue-haired guy says he shouldn't have. Scatter words and find out who is stronger. Only a real battle will help. All this is being watched by a doctor and a guy who only that woke up. The doctor sighs sadly, saying that Dante just checked out. He asks if it's worth trying to separate them. For what? Receives the answer of the doctor that he should not waste his strength on this. They are always here. The doctor continues his dictum and says that his opinion, if they continue, he will appear soon. The skull of some monster is visible in the crowd. Then into the black, empty eye sockets of a dead monster. The blue light turns on. Already 3 opponents are standing opposite each other, each with burning tattoos and determined to uphold their interests. How suddenly, each of them, just in a second, turns out to be wrapped in blue incredibly strong chains. None of them even had time to react to the fact that happening. Even a newcomer candidate cannot understand where these chains appeared. The crowd parted, and among it a man with this skull. He says that at this moment he will not tolerate breach of discipline. Holding in his hands a staff with the skull of this monster, he says how tired he is of the characters of the candidates. And then looking at all 3 in full growth, makes them, now, shut up, and sit quiet, as chickens.